The Banking Scene Director's Cut goes behind the scenes, sharing stories and insights to help you build the bank of tomorrow.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Sofia. Sofia Pogrebynska is joining us here today. She is IT and Cloud Officer at PayPal, and she will also be one of our speakers at the Banking Scene Conference 2026 Luxembourg to talk about rethinking governance in the world of agentic AI. But we're not there yet, which is why I decided to have a brief talk with her about today's cybersecurity challenges, but also looking a bit to the future. So welcome, Sofia.
Hey, Rick. Hello, everyone. I'm pleased to join you today.
Lovely. Culture remains a critical thing. Also, when you talk about more technical topics like cybersecurity, what do you consider the most effective ways to embed cybersecurity awareness into a company's DNA, especially where humans and intelligence systems are increasingly working side by side?
Well, what I've learned is that typically companies that do this well make it less of a training, more of a, let's say, cultural operating system, if I can express it that way,
Part of day-to-day life.
right? And as a former product manager, I just must say, through my career, I've learned that if you make it easy to adopt from the technology perspective, if you make cybersecurity really embedded into the tools that we all use on a daily basis, it just becomes a natural automatic behavior. So technology is one part of it. I'm really passionate about technology, about also enabling cybersecurity through technology. So that's one of the approaches. Obviously, it becomes very easy to report phishing. If you have a little button in Outlook, just report phishing. That's one of the examples. But obviously, it can be all embedded into DevSecOps and other things.
Yeah.
So the deeper it gets embedded into the tools and processes that we use on a daily basis, the easier it is to make it a DNA. But that's not all, obviously. When we want something to become more automatic behavior, we can do two things at a human level. We can speak about it, and we can model the behavior. So when the tone is set from the top, meaning that security objectives are being embedded into business objectives like compliance, operational resiliency, and such. So that becomes, then we're operating in entirely different context, meaning that, we have shared objectives, we have shared context. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
which is essential. I mean, cross collaboration is often where resilience succeeds or fails. So it makes perfect sense. You need that collaboration across, and also, I guess, common understanding across the organization to make sure that you remain safe from the outside evil world.
Precisely. And sometimes it makes sense. Sometimes it helps also to personalize the why. These days, everybody loves everything personalized. And why not cybersecurity? So,
Yeah.
We all want to secure our Wi-Fi. We want to secure our financial presence. We want to secure our identity. So knowing how it benefits you, what's in for you from
Yeah,
this
creating a
cybersecurity,
certain appeal to make people
right?
also interested in cybersecurity.
And those behaviors sometimes they just get embedded and they carry those good behaviors, they carry into workplace. And then one thing that I would like to say, for us technology and cybersecurity people, sometimes we're so focused on the technical aspects, statistics and such. But simple truth, humans communicate using storytelling. We tell stories. And when we drive those cyber awareness campaigns, I like telling stories, how we
That's
stopped.
amazing. Because that was
Right.
also one of the key conclusions that we had at the Bank Scene Art Night on November 17, where we spoke about reinventing the art of the possible. And we had a professional AI filmmaker to build us a 20-minute story about the critical questions that will shape our society going forward for the coming years. And her key message to financial services as well was, maybe we need a bit more storytelling to ensure that our message is properly understood by everyone that's involved in banking, which is everyone.
You're right. And that builds intuition. And then intuition is something that embeds security into the DNA. Circling back to the question.
Yeah. So makes me wonder how important is HR in that equation? Because I can imagine that's the last department people talk about at cybersecurity conferences, but I can imagine that if once you start embedding the storytelling into building that resilience for an organization, HR should probably be the first to be part of the team to make progress.
Well, that's one of the good examples, by the way. I would like to say that when the cross-functional collaboration is where resiliency is won or lost. So how does HR plus cybersecurity how can they work together? They can work together when three things align. First, shared language. We need to speak the same language. HR speaks business language. Cybersecurity speaks mostly technical language. So we need to align on the language. Second, shared objectives.
Yeah.
And shared context, obviously. So
Yeah.
what that means is when individual departments' objectives are tied to broader business context.
Mhm.
So our let's say cybersecurity and HR goals, there is something common. There is some common denominator. So that's for example, that can be incentivizing the right behavior, just like we can incentivize innovation or customer obsession. That's when it sticks culturally. Another example is probably, where the common language, like shared language, matters a lot, but it's also where the great impact can be achieved is legal plus security. This doesn't come like a natural.
Kind of break that language gap between people and, well, there's still people, but more technical people. Is that what you mean? To like the language of technical people doesn't always resonate to the business people, and that HR could be bridging those two?
I mean, HR owns typically in their organization, if we think from the process perspective, HR owns onboarding, offboarding, performance reviews, leadership development, and that's where those micro trainings for cybersecurity can be embedded. And that's where we can embed as well, not only what has been achieved, but how you have achieved that. So that's one of the ways to support, in principle, embedding these secure behaviors at organizational level.
Makes a lot of sense. And it ties nicely to my next question. How can organizations measure whether their cybersecurity training and awareness programs are actually effective in a world where threats evolve faster than people can learn?
Well, first off, first that comes to mind is obviously the cultural sentiment, meaning you can't manage what you can't understand. So when conducting those awareness campaigns, it's good to have the feedback loop. I like to get feedback. I typically in my work, I get feedback often. I get a lot of feedback. Maybe I'm a little too obsessed with the feedback, but that's quite important. Right? It helps you to understand where you stand. You can't really evolve if you don't know where you stand. So I ask all kind of questions. I'll give you an example. This year we have conducted the cybersecurity awareness training, and we had very keen interest. But then, obviously, we've conducted the training. We had the best-selling authors speak at our training and all that. So it was very interesting. Then immediately, I just sat with the individual teams and asked them, so how was it? How did you enjoy it? What are the questions that you had? And what is the most relevant security questions to your function? So getting this understanding, do I feel one of the examples, and this kind of feedback doesn't have to be personal. You can just really ask them through anonymous surveys and just find the sentiment. Do I feel safe reporting mistakes? Or does the training help me? Does this tool help me do my job better? Do I know am I sufficiently informed about this new and novel threat, for example? And do I have sufficient tools to protect the company? To embed those best practices in my work. So that's a cultural sentiment.
And like looking at the last part of the question, like in a world where threats evolve faster than people can learn, um, how do you anticipate that in building those trainings? Is it just a matter of speeding up the process of updating those trainings, or do you also anticipate those threats in another way?
That's a great question, and that's where the focus shifts from the compliance checkbox to just do
Yeah,
the annual training. Well, it's not the annual training anymore. It's just the threats evolve so
continues.
fast. You have
Yeah,
to catch up. So for me, this is a new reality we operate in, where everybody's attention is fragmented. We work in little chunks. It's not
yeah,
that you know. So for me, I think one of the approaches is really embedding those little micro modules related to something, the important points that you really want to draw attention to
yeah.
through usual tools, through the screens in the office, through small campaigns here and there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because I can imagine, like, you touched upon something important there. I think it's the micro attention span of people these days, which unfortunately also, like, you much easier click on things probably because of that. And on the other hand, the threats are no longer purely human either. It's starting to evolve more and more into AI. And today, most of those emails or links can easily be identified as fakes, but we do know that that's changing rapidly as well. So you start having like a double threat. On the one hand, there's maybe less attention span from people, so you need to make sure that they remain sharp on any inconsistency that may be a sign of cybersecurity threat. And on the other hand, the threats themselves become much more sensitive and much less aware, I guess.
Yeah, and that is true. There are many ways to look at it. Well, some threats are really, I mean, yeah, the cyber criminals are using AI tools, all kinds of AI tools,
Yeah.
very actively. So that's one aspect to it. Indeed, the fragmented behavior it only means that the secure behaviors need to be embedded into automatical behavior, and
Yeah.
the employee technology really has to be um, equipped with all possible security, all necessary security tools to make it easy, technically easy process. Process that's easy to adopt at your fingertips. You don't have to go and look at additional instruction. This is the most natural approach. But then you can analyze as well the operational outcomes. That matters a lot. Times to detect, time to respond, vulnerability remediation and all that, those metrics. What you can do as well, you can analyze the behavioral signals. You
Yeah.
can, for example, how suspicious activities are they getting reported faster? That's, by the way, one of the good indicators of the positive security culture in the organization. If people feel safe to report security threats, suspicious activities, if there is an anonymous channel, let's say, to report that in a safe way, and people do that increasingly, this is a positive behavioral
Okay.
signal.
Yeah. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Um, you'll speak at Bank Scene Conference 2026 Luxembourg, as I said in the very beginning, and you will talk about rethinking governance in a world of agentic AI. How is AI, especially autonomous decision-making systems, forcing cybersecurity leaders to rethink traditional governance? And you don't need to give the entire answer if it would take an entire keynote speech, but maybe just like a snippet, some teasers for what you will be talking about on January 27 in Luxembourg.
Absolutely. Look, this is a conversation I'm really excited to have at the conference. So this is a great topic, by the way. And well, there are many ways to think about it, but one thing is for sure that agentic AI challenges the old governance models, and there is a lot that the security professionals need to take into account and really see through those shifts. One of the things is obviously move from the periodic oversight. Like, it's like security training. You don't do just annual training anymore. It's not enough.
Yeah.
You have to do a little more than that. Have to do simulations and such. For the governance perspective, it's shifting more to real time, obviously. And then there is another important aspect Well, the data governance, of course, is one of the important aspects behind it. We all know that there's been a lot was said and done for the data governance aspect to it,
Yeah.
aspect behind the AI systems. But I think what matters as well, and what doesn't get particularly coverage yet, is decision governance and how that accountability is embedded into the organizations using those systems.
But that's using those systems internally, maybe more than externally, because externally you don't have any control about it.
I mean, it depends on the system. Some controls, yeah, I suppose there will be some controls even.
Yeah. No, cyber control, obviously, but there's also cyber threats through agentic AI as well, I can imagine,
Oh,
where
but
governance needs to adapt to as well.
But that brings us to the question about accountability. I think that's one of the discussions that, it's very, it's a very hot topic these days. The accountability for, for the systems using
Yeah.
agentic AI.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Maybe one last question, and I got the answer already a couple of weeks ago at a finance conference where we had a cybersecurity expert in a panel. So I'm very keen to hear whether the answer will be the same hearing it from you. But a big governance question: who is ultimately responsible for cybersecurity? Is it the CISO, the Cyber Information Security Officer, every employee, the board, HR, anyone else? And how do you see that accountability evolving going forward?
Fantastic question, Rick. It really depends on how the organization is set up, and there is some flexibility. If you think about it from a regulatory perspective, there is some flexibility how things can be arranged internally from the internal controls perspective. But well, ultimate accountability. Speaking of ultimate accountability, obviously it sits with a management body.
Yeah.
If we're speaking about we're speaking about financial industry, right? So that's that. But then it is very typical that CISOs look after operational resiliency. Sometimes it's a joint responsibility. Sometimes those are joint objectives between the business functions and cybersecurity and technology. And that's because the cyber, and business, really technology powers the business so much that these accountability models are shifting. Well, that's an interesting question. I'd love to hear what was the conclusion at that conference you
Feedback
attended.
there was every employee is accountable because every single behavior can negatively affect cybersecurity. And there can't be one body or one person accountable for all those threats, because if there's one employee that hasn't been thinking critically about that one email that entered, how can you leave, for example, the CISO accountable for that employee opening that email or clicking that link? So at the end, everyone somehow accountable for the cybersecurity resilience of its organization, which comes back to, I think, the key conclusion of this talk is that cybersecurity should be part of the culture, making sure that it is part of the day-to-day behavior of every employee, because that's the only way that you can save the castle, so to say.
And that's a great way to see it. Of
Yeah.
course, you're absolutely right. The cybersecurity is responsibility of all of us.
Yeah.
Everybody is responsible for securely using the tools
Exactly.
and driving those processes. For each of the functions. Well, the accountability though is something else. That's anyway.
Yeah, legal accountability versus, I get that. But
Yeah.
in terms of key message, for me, resonated pretty well. Leave every employee responsible for cybersecurity, and that way you create that common understanding, which brings us back to the cultural element. So yeah.
I think there is just one more point. I think the future of the work. If you think about the future of the workforce,
Mhm.
of course, it's evolving very fast. We started talking about the agentic AI. So future is agentic AI, or let's say machine plus human. But we need to, when we think about a responsibility for those decisions that the systems make, it
Mhm.
always sits with humans.
Yeah. Well, I hope so. We'll see what the
It
future
has
brings,
to.
but for sure, I hope so. At the end, it's humans that create the machines for now. And yeah, we should be end responsible for things that we create. Yeah.
Well, sounds good. Look, I'm super excited to join you at the conference in January, and thank you
Probably
very much for
your
having me today.
speech. It's going to be a great event. And thank you very much for joining us up front. Speak to you soon again. Thanks, Sophia.
Thank you.
Bye.